afternoon, everyone. Yeah, this is necessary because it's almost towards the end of the day, right? Yeah? I'm sure you must have heard some amazing presentations today, and your day was good, right? Yeah? Cool. But I thank you so much for coming here all the way towards the end of the day to hear my talk. I'm sure that you had a great day, and Testing Talk has been amazing event today, and lots of knowledge sharing, and I mean like lots of information, valuable information rather. Thank you so much, Cam. Cam is not here, but yeah, thank you so much, Cam, for organizing this event for us. And I really appreciate all of you being here towards the end of the day and hearing my talk. I can see lots of new faces, and I can see some family faces as well. Probably those people who has worked with me. Yeah, so thank you so much everyone for making to the event. And it's almost towards the end of the day. Probably you have eaten lots of carbs, and your brain is overloaded with lots of great information. Am I right? Yes. Raise your hands, yes? Yes? So, I would like you guys to refocus back to the testing talk and make this event as a memorable event. So, I would like all of you to raise your right hand up in the sky. Imagine that you are in Ed Sheeran's concert. I'm Ed Sheeran for today. Okay? And don't worry, there are no kiss cams. And the soft music is played, and you are just waving your hands. Play the music! Come on! Come on! Come on! Come on! Very good, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much. Cool. So, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Vidula. I'm working with Tratusha as a performance test consultant. Here at Tratusha, I work on any number of exciting projects at NSW government and even the non-government space. But I want to tell you something else about me, probably not technical, because everyone talks about the technical. I would like to tell something else about me. Performance testing is not my first love. I never wanted to be performance tester, I would say. I wanted to be Bollywood singer. But, you know, the typical Asian families, they're always behind degrees. They want their children to be doctor or engineer and earn lots of money, you know? And that's the reason why I became engineer, a good engineer rather, I would say, yeah. And performance testing is my passion. And specifically, SAP performance testing is my niche. I love SAP. I love working with SAP. So it's like a kind of situation that I'm here, I'm presenting. I wanted always to rock the concerts, you know, the singing concerts. Today I'm rocking testing talk. And I would like to walk you through my experience and insights related to my latest performance testing project, where I use Redis to elevate the test data management process. I use Redis, but there are multiple tools available in the market that can help you to manage your test data. So I would like to give a bit of a background of the project. My company was engaged to deliver performance testing services at NSW government client. So this project had gone through different difficulties or challenges. So mainly 4 challenges that I faced for this particular project. This project was one of the rare projects where performance was not just a tick on a paper that we always do at the end of cycle, right? Almost every one of us. It was rather a key event that would decide. It was a key success criteria that would decide the success of the project. It was very critical to the project success. But the performance was not just the one challenge I had, because the NSW government client always hosts public websites. So you can imagine that n number of concurrent users trying to hit to the public website. So the performance has to be within a key, within a SLA. The response time should be SLA. The applicant should be able to serve n number of concurrent users. So this was one of the challenge. The second challenge, since the governor had decided, I'm saying just the governor, some government delegate decided in the parliament, we are going live on certain day. So can you imagine that this application has to go live on that day? So the key date, the go live date was fixed. It was immovable. We could not change the date. And that's how most of us must have faced. Like performance is not just, performance testing is not just, the fancy thing, but always we work under the pressure. No one tells you, okay, you take ample time and do your performance test and give us amazing results. Has anyone said to you? No, I don't think so. At least in my career, no one has given me ample time for the performance testing. So always, timelines are tight. What was the next challenge for this particular project? The next challenge was the budget, the fancy name budget. Nowadays, every one of us has gone through that kind of challenge. The budget was also one of the constraints for this project. Project manager said, Vidula, we don't have budget and we don't have any tool available in-house for you to select and rely on. So it was kind of situation like tight timelines. Performance is the key important factor and budget is a problem. So in that case, I had to select JMeter because JMeter is open source tool, everyone must be knowing it. So I had to select JMeter. So in one line, I would like to describe this situation. Client always wants champagne solution with beer budget. That always happens with almost every one of us. And that's the reason why most of us use JMeter as a performance testing tool. So the last challenge of the project. Last challenge was something different challenge. The script structure, since it was a public-facing website, NSW government, the scripting structure or the application structure was very, very complex. One script was creating data for another script, and that communication between those two scripts has to happen in real time. And once any data record has been used, you cannot use the same data again for the next virtual user. And this was like kind of problem to me that, okay, with the traditional performance testing parameterization techniques, I cannot simulate this kind of behavior. Here, I'm talking about thousands of virtual users and millions of data. The CSV can't handle that much load, even though it can handle because it's a flat file system. But what about the visualization? How can I manage this data? How can visualize this data? So which tool to be selected for visualization and management of data? That was the problem. That was a question. Which tool to be used was not a problem. But the problem is visualization and management of complex data and communication between this script in the real time. And that's the reason why I started evaluating different test data management tools available. And then after a fair study, I came to know that Redis and VTS, these are one of the best tools available for the test data management. So here, the problem was still remain, like the traditional parameterization techniques are not able to handle this kind of complex behavior. Like one script is passing data to another script, they are communicating within a mean time, and then uniqueness of a data. Definitely you can manage uniqueness of data in the traditional parameterization technique, but what about millions of data? How can we do that? How can we visualize it? And that was my problem. So both Redis and VTS, both are open source tools. So VTS works very well with Load Runner. The Redis I had used in my previous exercise for one of the development project, small project, internal project. So I had an idea like how Redis is being used. And I had a lot of study regarding these tools, like how to make JMeter and VTS work together. But considering the tight timelines, I really did not have time to dig out, understand how to make JMeter and VTS work together. Really, I had no time. But I knew that Redis can help to solve this particular problem. The problem was managing, visualizing, and managing the real-time data communication between two scripts. Then, after the fair amount of study, I came to know that JMeter and Redis can work together with the JMeter, one of the plugin. And that was wow situation for me, wow. Yes, I can use Redis and I can solve my problem. Then I started collecting all the information regarding it and how to make Redis really work with JMeter. So, mainly in the traditional parameterization technique, almost every one of us has used CSV, Dart file. We have feed to the script. We have worked so long, day and days and days, created data, feed to the script and all that stuff. Please raise your hand if every one of you has used CSV as a solution. Yeah? But there are possible problems with the traditional parameterization techniques. What are the problems? Managing large CSV can become cumbersome. And specifically when you're talking about the millions of test data records, visualization, you can use Notepad++, definitely, but I'm expert in Excel. I really love Excel. So managing and visualization of this data was a real problem to me. Then, what was the next challenge? That the lack of built-in database. For example, I want two scripts to work together. With the traditional parameterization technique, I cannot make those two scripts work together. It's really not possible because parameters are tightly coupled with the script. And if any virtual user wants to, hey, can I borrow your parameter? No, you can't borrow my parameter. They are stuck with mine. It's kind of mine, you know. The typical CSV files are stored locally on local machines or on the controller. They are not centrally stored somewhere that you can access and all the scripts can access. So there is a no real-time database parameterization sourcing. Otherwise, you create any kind of a custom scripting to do that. Okay? Considering the timelines and all this stuff, really it was not easy for me to do any kind of new study and then, design some more fancy solution. So the traditional parameterization technique is not really suitable for the dynamically generated data. For example, one script is creating data for another script. Definitely, the inter-thread communication is there. But what about visualization and debugging and all that stuff? So the traditional parameterization technique, you cannot store dynamically generated data back to the parameters file. No, that's not possible. Parameterization technique, that's why it is static. It does not work with the session-based UUIDs or CSRF tokens or any kind of dynamically generated values. You cannot store them back to the parameterization files. So parameters are actually tightly coupled to the script. So every script will have its own dedicated parameterization list. If you want to update any kind of a parameter, you have to open the file, you have to load the file, save it, load your script again. So it's kind of like, for doing this kind of task, the more time is required. And the time was the least thing I had. And sometimes it is really difficult to ensure the uniqueness of the parameters as well, because there could be situation that manual human error can occur and it can ruin your performance test. It can ruin the behavior of the script that has been decided, that the intended behavior of the script can be ruined if there are any manual data errors. And if data collision happens, then that's a big no-no, considering the quality of the performance test. So that's the reason why I started studying about Redis, like how can I use Redis in my performance test to use as a test data management tool. So many of you must be having a question like, what is Redis? So Redis is the in-memory data storage, like storage database. So when we say in-memory, the data is actually stored in a memory. So the read and the write operation is very fast because like all the data items are available in the memory. Just fetch it and use it, fetch it and use it, or pass it. So data is stored in the key value pair. So you can use Redis as a set, as a hash, or as a list. Mostly in my cases, I use Redis as a list so that it's easy for me to fetch data on the fly. You can keep your data stored for longer hours, number of days. Even though the Redis is restarted, still your data can be persistent. So how to make data persistent in Redis? There is a function called AOF. If you enable that one of the function inside the Redis, your data will be persistent. So what exactly AOF works? It fetches the write operation to the database. It logs all the write operations. And when you have restarted your Redis server, all these logged write operations are again rerun, and it rebuilds the database. So even though for the maintenance purposes, if you have restarted your server, still you can use your data even after the restart. So all the operations like reading, writing, session management, everything Redis can handle automatically. You don't have to worry about it. And because of this, like Redis is really a very good data management tool, test data management tool. Since it is an in-memory database, the reading, writing, and all the operations are done in milliseconds or sub-milliseconds. So you can imagine, like you have designed a test case with the 1,000 concurrent users and millions of transactions are happening across your performance test environment or across your scripts. Still, you can manage this complex behavior seamlessly with the help of Redis. So I would like to explain a very simple example because I work with NSW government clients, so I cannot disclose exactly what the project was and what the exact architecture of the project was. So let's consider a very simple example. Say there are 4 different kinds of the scripts I have. One is a student script, another is a parent script, third one is the admin script, and the last one is again the student script with the submitting the assignments. I have Redis in the center. Redis, I have loaded Redis, for example, with the base data. When I say base data, what is base data? The base data that will help you to start your performance test. So here, my base data is a login of all the different scripts. So login of the parent, login of the admin, login of the student, login data of the student. So everyone's login data I have already preloaded in my Redis. So what can happen here? For example, the students can log in with the ID and the password. It can, after the handshaking, for example, the server is generating the session ID. For my purposes, I have made this session ID non-expiry because I want to do a couple of rounds of tests. So I want to reuse this data, for example. So that session ID can be stored back to the Redis. So now your Redis is holding the session ID. Again, consider there is another script of the student. Here, there is no sticky session kind of a thing, so I can use the same student logon again and again, for example, for another virtual user. The same student can log in to the Redis, to the application with the help of Redis student ID and password, and can fetch the session ID. With the help of session ID, it can submit, for example, the assignment or whatever the stuff that it has to do. And session ID is one of the primary key for that particular user, for example, that student. So it can save all the answers back to the Redis. Consider another scenario like parent. Parent can log in to the application with the help of parent student IDs and the password. Parent script can submit whatever the stuff that it needs to do, the form, filling of the form and all that stuff, and it can generate the application ID that can be stored back to the Redis. The admin script can fetch again this application ID and do the further processing, move this particular form or move this application to the next level. So all these scripts can work together you can say that this is a holistic way actually to show how the script can communicate with each other with the help of Redis. Definitely, you can do this kind of communication with the help of inter-thread communication, but when it is a distributed test, I would prefer to use Redis or any kind of a test data management tool that can help for this kind of communication. Are there any questions till now? All good? Thank you. So here, for my project, I use Docker, but anyone can use AWS and install Redis on the server and all that stuff. So I would just like to give you a bit of an idea, like how can you use Redis for your project. You can use a Docker container. So inside a Docker, I have set up the Flask API and Redis. So these are the 2 containers that are running inside my Docker. Flask API is a endpoint for the modern, like outside world, can communicate with Redis through the Flask. So you can write data to Redis with the help of Flask and rpush method is one of the method of Redis. So you can push even the thousands of records to the Redis with the help of Flask. And Flask is very fast in terms of the solution. Redis works on the 6379 port. Flask works on 5000 port. So the Docker ports 5000 and 6379 I have mapped to the host port so that outside world can talk with Redis and Flask seamlessly. So here the JMeter is holding all the scripts. So I have created my scripts in JMeter. JMeter can talk with Flask. JMeter can talk with Redis on their respective ports. Any questions so far? Yep.
Using JMeter and Flask API, I think, does Redis not have its own API which you can actually call? I mean, I know it's embedded. Isn't there? Sorry.
Can you?
I'll just say it. Yeah. Isn't there now like some sort of way to communicate with? I mean, because I know Redis is in memory and connected through browsers and stuff, but can you not still call it through HTTP? Isn't there a way of doing that?
Sorry, I could not get your question.
I'm just saying, I know that you use Flask to communicate with Redis.
Yeah.
And JMeter to communicate with Flash, but isn't there a way of calling Redis directly through HTTP now?
No, actually there is an unfortunate reason for that. The Redis, we can read from the Redis, and we can, like, as soon as you read, you can remove that data item from the Redis. But we did not have any kind of solution to write data back to the Redis with the help of JMeter plugin. Because it reads the Redis dataset, unfortunately, we don't have any kind of a plugin which can write data back to the Redis. And that was the reason we use Flask here.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So the Flask here can work as an endpoint solution to write data back to the Redis on 5000 port. And I have created the Docker compose file with the help of rpush method so that I can write whatever I want under that method and use that method to write data back to the Redis. So the name of a method is rpush, but actually behind the scene, Redis also uses the rpush method. It's one of the command that Redis uses to push data back to itself. Here, the Redis Insights is my visualization tool. So instead of Excel, I'm using Redis Insights here. So the Redis Insight can be useful to visualize what's happening with your Redis, what's happening with your data. You can do the real-time monitoring of data. You can visualize everything, what's happening behind the scene. So I have just used Redis Insights, same, on the same port, like localhost 6379. I use localhost for just modeling purposes because I cannot disclose my architecture of the end client. Any questions so far? Cool. So, how does my Docker look like? Inside my Docker, there are two containers. One is Redis, another is Flask API. So what I had done here, if you see what I had done here, JMeter port 6379 has been mapped to the host port 6379. The Docker port, sorry, not JMeter, Docker port 5000 has been mapped to the host 5000 port so that all the other nodes or other components of my test can talk with my Flask and with my Redis. Any questions so far? Cool. So what are the steps involved in JMeter when you want to use Redis as a part of your JMeter solution? So first, you have to install or set up Redis and Flask inside Docker. Here I have used Docker. You can use any kind of server or maybe the local server, use AWS or any kind of solution, scalable solutions. You can talk with your client and then you can decide your architecture accordingly. But you have to set up the Redis and the Flask inside Docker for the sake of this particular project. You have to write the base data to the Redis. So when you write base data to the Redis, what is the base data? As I explained earlier, logon details of your scripts. You can write back to the Redis. And that base data, you can write with the help of Python script, Flask API, and rpush method. So what I had done, I have created a CSV of all the logons, student logons, all the XYZ logons, parent logon, admin logons, and I have loaded that base data to Redis. Once the base data has been loaded, you have to do next step. You have to install the Redis JMeter plugin through the Redis JMeter plugin manager. So once you install Redis, there is one of the plugin. You can anyway see. I can explain you later on. Once you install that plugin, you are now set to use Redis in your script because your Redis is already holding the base data. To read data from Redis, on your test plan, you will add the config element. The name is Redis dataset. Then once you install this particular, you use this particular config element, the wizard is open. Here you have to mention the key name. If you remember, I said that Redis stores data in the key and value pair. Here I have used list, so I have just one key and all the data is stored in form of the indexes, 0, 1, 2, 3, blah, blah, blah. So the Redis key name has to be mentioned. Then you have to mention the variable names that you want to fetch from the Redis and use those variables in your script, wherever you want to use. There are two necessary fields when you're working with Redis, and that's pretty important. That will decide the behavior of a Redis, how you want to mold a Redis for your performance testing purposes. Recycle data on use. If you say yes, it means that it will preserve data, even though any data item has been read by any virtual user, it will still save that particular data item upon consumption. It will not delete it. But if you say recycle data on use as no, here is the game changer. Suppose you want to create a test design where you don't want that data to be reused again and again. You want uniqueness of data across each virtual user. In that case, you have to use this particular setting. Recycle data on use, say no. So, as soon as your virtual user reads the data from Redis, it will be removed. It will be wiped out from Redis. Maintaining uniqueness of data across thousands of virtual users. Don't worry about the Redis. It can handle your thousands of virtual users. It's tried and tested. Okay, any questions so far? Yeah?
You're talking about the base data.
Yeah.
How is it?
That's okay. Everyone can hear.
So you're talking about the base data, right? So how important is it? Is it kind of setting a template, like a header section in the CSV file of sort of things, or when
No,
you say
so
base data,
when I will show you what I mean by the base data, because maybe you will not get clear picture. Maybe let me go towards the next slide and then you can re-ask the question, because I think I'm sure that it will solve your question.
Sure. And
So the base data, why I'm saying base data? I'm not saying, I can say the basic data, or I can say starter data. Okay, I can use any kind of a name. I'm just using here base data. Base data means the data with which my scripts can start working. And then My scripts are taking care of all the other dynamically generated data. They can write those data back to the Redis, and other script can fetch that data depending on whatever the purpose of the script is. Okay? But I will answer your question, definitely.
Yeah, and one other one, the Flask API integration with JMeter.
Yeah.
So is it something that's coming up?
Sorry, what do you say?
The Flask API integration with JMeter. So do we have a plugin sort of thing?
No, no, no. So it's kind of endpoint. That question will also be sorted.
Okay.
Don't worry. Yeah. Any further more questions?
Thank you. Yeah, in JMeter, we do have the options available like set properties and get properties, which help us to pass on the variable from one script to other, right? From one thread group to
Yes,
other.
yes.
So what's the constraint involved in that?
Like specifically, I really wanted to visualize my data, monitor it because thousands of virtual users were using the data. I wanted to view my data live, and that's the reason why actually I chose Redis. Inter-thread communication is also available. Get property, set property. Even with the custom scripting, we can solve all of the problems. But I wanted to handle my data and wanted to see it in front of me. Because all these things that happens inside the variable, inside the arrays, and so on. But I really wanted to see it, feel it. That's the reason why I chose Redis.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Outside of tools like JMeter, outside of tools like JMeter, and I understand there's a particular need for that. Sorry, outside of tools like JMeter, and I understand there's a particular need for that. Say in tools like K6, they have their own way of passing data between users, and they have their own way of persisting data. Do you see this as a particularly a Redis problem? Sorry, particularly a JMeter integration type problem, or have you worked in other projects where it's been solved differently?
Can you rephrase your question again?
I'm just
sorry,
saying,
because half I heard before Mike.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, in other tools, like for example K6, you can persist data.
K6 you're talking about?
Yeah, other frameworks.
Okay.
Do you think this is the problem that you've had to deal with, that you had to solve with Redis, is a particularly JMeter specific problem, or do you think it's do you think it's something that's applicable everywhere across frameworks?
See, the thing is, because it was the budget constraint that every one of us must have faced, I had to use JMeter. Yep. Sorry. Yeah. So I had to use JMeter as a solution over there. Definitely I can use K6, but I'm new to K6, frankly telling. I never used K6. And I really did not have time to read about K6. But the Redis and JMeter can talk with each other with the help of plugin. And that was an added advantage for me. And that's the reason why, I blindly chose JMeter actually. I did not know that, okay, the Redis also works with JMeter. It was kind of wow factor for me. But yes, it can solve your problem with the help of this plugin.
All right, thank you. I've just been asked to take over from
No worries.
From Lisa. So are there any further questions? If not, we'll wrap it up.
Sure.
Yeah, just one more question. I'll bring the mic over.
Sure.
So where did you actually run this execution? Is it in a live integrated environment, or is it like a sort of isolated performance testing?
So the thing is your Docker will run in isolation.
Yeah.
You can maintain the security measures like authentication, TLS encryption, VPNized servers and all that stuff. Definitely your security team can take care of all the security measures because every client has different security requirements. So it's not like one fit all solution.
The performance test, the endpoints which you are hitting to test, that's basically hosted on the integrated environment, right?
Yeah, so inside the environment. Yeah, inside
so
my...
having this is like NSW public thing. I believe the system is tightly integrated with many other systems. So, and the data which you are creating dynamically, how do you make sure that data is present in the downstreams or upstreams like that? Because in order to make sure that data is interconnected and not using the random data.
No, okay, so you are talking about that end
Yeah.
application which I was
Yes,
testing.
yeah.
It was just an isolated application. It was not really, like
Okay.
integrated.
Makes sense.
And even if like there is a need, we generally, what we do is we stop the integration parts to the downstream systems to make the system isolated work.
Okay.
And then we do the performance testing generally of that sole system itself. Because again, the licensing and all that stuff is involved when the downstream systems are there.
Yeah.
And specifically being, the NSW government client, we work in n number of endpoints and vendors and all that stuff. So yeah.
All right, thank you very much. That's going to have to be the last question, I'm afraid, because we've all got, in a minute, we'll all have to go upstairs for the prize giving in the Stream 1 room. Just before you go, you have a prize to give out, as I understand.
Yes, so what did I use as a API endpoint to talk with Redis?
Okay, so
Who raised the hand first?
who do you want to give the prize to?
Okay, I will ask one more question.
Okay.
Okay? Which song did I play? I can see this lady. Oh, yeah, the guy. Yeah. Yeah, the one.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Well, please come up and take your prize. Thank you very much. And please give you a round of applause.
Good. Yeah, very good. Very good.